Goodness, Arkansas has turned on the Jets, the after Jets, honestly, with what they're doing, and they won. And it's a huge win. And they're rolling. And we're now joined by Scottie Bordelon. He covers Arkansas for WholeHogSports.com. What are they doing differently? What's going on, Scottie, that they're playing? Because they really didn't have a lot of quality wins there for a long, long time and had some losses like everybody, but they seem to be playing at a very extremely high level.
Yeah, I think it's a couple of different things. I mean, J.D. Note and Jalen Williams, I think they've really taken their games to kind of a new level. And I've been a big fan of J.D. Note's game for, basically the whole time that he's been here. I think early in his career, especially last year, he was a guy that came off the bench. He won Sixth Man of the Year in the SEC. But he could be, a little bit ball dominant. And, he's a guy, again, coming off the bench, but he was one of the guys that, was going to be one of your higher usage rate players. The shot percentage probably led the team last year. This year, he's been asked to shoulder a lot of the load offensively, just scoring the ball and just trying to set teammates up. And, I mean, he averaged 26 points a game last week against Florida and Kentucky. Pretty remarkable. Against top 10 teams, this month, Auburn and Kentucky averaged 29 points, I think 5.5 assists. So he's playing at an unreal level. Jalen Williams is he's kind of a walking double-double now. And one of the more interesting things that came out of Saturday's post-game was we found out Jalen Williams was sick at halftime. That game he was throwing up in the locker room. He came back out in the second half, and then one stretch when Arkansas really needed some points, he scored 10 straight. And I think another underrated thing this team's doing defensively is they're so much better defending the three. In November they gave up 17 threes to Northern Iowa, and in the second half alone in February, Arkansas gave up 16 threes total. So this team's really defending the perimeter at a high level too.
Is this one of the best, the most impressive weeks you can think of when you've got 3 games in 7 days? You've got Tennessee and Kentucky bookending that and the wins that they had, especially, Kentucky coming in and playing like they had been, really, really impressive.
Yeah, it's probably the most impressive stretch, I would say, of this season, no question. I think Arkansas last year had a stretch where they played 3 home games against Florida, Alabama, and LSU. Those were big games for Arkansas because they were trying to, get back on the scene nationally. They won all those games. But you're right, like this 3-game stretch they just came off of. Like, I didn't know how Arkansas was going to respond, honestly, after a really, really physical, grinded out type game against Tennessee. I mean, they've got to be one of the more physical teams in the country. Their front line, I mean, they roll out guys, chiseled out of stone. But they came back and then they won at Florida for the first time since 1995. And I think this Arkansas team's just so tough that, I give them, a decent chance to win just about anywhere on the road. Just they're so mentally and physically tough. And then to play a Kentucky team that, is pretty close to full strength. I don't know that Severe Wheeler and Ty Washington were, 100%, but, they got Kentucky's best shot. Kentucky got a monster game from Oscar Tshiebwe. I mean, I've never seen anybody like him come through Bud Walton Arena. But they kind of handle their business and starts on the defensive end, and everything on the offensive end flows through J.D. Note and David Williams. Yeah.
Sorry about that. Expand on your Oscar Tshiebwe thoughts and best player to roll through Walton Arena. That's saying something right there.
Yeah. Again, I'm just 28. I've always been on the beat for 4 years, but I've never seen a guy who, in terms of like pure centers, he's probably a little bit undersized, maybe at 6'9", but he's got the most sure hands that I think I've seen, and he just got like this innate ability to read balls off the rim and get in proper positions to grab rebounds, and he's excellent at grabbing rebounds. Just it almost seems like with his fingertips, and you could swat at it. You could swat at the ball and probably not going to knock it out of his hands. He was. I think Eric Musselman called him a monster after the game, and I'm not sure that even did it justice.
They have won 13 of 14 games, and the one loss was a point to Alabama, who we know is a giant killer team. Baylor knows that as well, along with a few others. And now, what would you have said, Scottie, and I think we had you on, but what would you have said about, let's say, 3 weeks ago, 4 weeks ago, a month ago, that Arkansas had a chance to win the regular or get a piece of the regular season SEC men's basketball title?
Oh man, 100% would have said you were crazy. This team, when they lost 5 of 6 and they started, SEC play 0-3, they didn't have an identity whatsoever. And I think Eric Musselman, I think I said it last time I was on with you guys, that he just kind of sat down and thought about what his dad would do if he was in his situation, and he just went bigger and tougher in that lineup. And some of the guys that were playing in December and the early part of conference play, those guys are not really playing anymore, with the exception of a couple guys just in like some spot minutes or give guys breathers. But I would have never guessed that Arkansas had a shot. And one of the big things that this team's doing is like they're handling their business at home, and they're doing the same thing on the road. Like they've won 5 of their last 6 on the road, and they've won the last 2 years. They've won 10 road games, under Eric Musselman. I think they've won 8 the previous 3 seasons. So it's a team that its toughness and its defense travels.
Scottie, what was the general vibe about Kentucky kind of throwing up their arms in that last couple seconds when they had the stoppage, setting the bench into the locker room already just to avoid the inevitable court storming?
Yeah, that was interesting. When I saw that happen, I immediately tweeted that Kentucky, their bench had walked off the floor, and then I was looking at that tweet on my laptop, and I was like, kind of thinking about the kind of the context of the situation. Like Kentucky didn't know, whether they probably did the smart thing, getting their guys off the floor, not really knowing whether Arkansas fans were going to storm the floor or not. The thing was, Hunter Yurachek, the AD, on Friday, he kind of sent a message out to fans that, if Arkansas beats Kentucky, that the players and the coaching staff are going to come to the fans instead of the fans coming onto the floor, because he didn't want to write another $250,000 check for fans storming the floor. So it kind of made sense to me. And we asked a couple of the players, JD Note after the game said he wasn't bothered by it at all just because Arkansas won, and Stanley Amude thought it was pretty smart too. So I kind of get why it happened.
So sitting at 23-6 now, number 14 in the country. LSU at home coming up on Wednesday, and then Tennessee to close it out on Saturday on the road, which will be a top 15 game. Just your thoughts on the last week of the regular season and how the Razorbacks are shaping up with the tournament right around the corner.
Yeah, it's another big week. I feel like that's all Arkansas's had, since they started slow out of the gate in SEC play. They get LSU in their home finale on Wednesday. That's going to be a pretty tough game because Arkansas beat LSU in Baton Rouge without Eric Musselman. I think in the second game of what became an 8 or 9 game SEC win streak. But LSU didn't have Xavier Pinson at that time, their starting point guard. He really changes things for LSU, offensively. LSU, they're legit on defense. Like they're really tough and scrappy, and they'll pick your pocket in a second. The thing is, I think they miss Pinson most offensively because I think in conference play, I think they're 12th in offensive efficiency. So they've struggled there without him. It's still going to be a pretty tough game. I just think, if Arkansas handles its business Wednesday, the scene that's going to happen at Tennessee is going to be pretty crazy on Saturday. It'll be 2 top 15 teams. Tennessee hasn't lost a game at home this year. Like Arizona, Kentucky, and Auburn didn't win at Tennessee this year, so that's going to be a big showdown. I just give Arkansas a shot, man, just because they're tough. They finally kind of know who they are, so I think that gives them a chance against just about every team out there.
One thing they do need to work on is the analytics, right? Where they are with the net ratings or Ken Palm or places like that. It's still, despite what they've done in the last 14 games or so, they still kind of lack some of the quality wins. They just got one, obviously, with Tennessee, and they got one again with Kentucky, and they have others. Hell, they beat Auburn. But it still seems like they're playing catch-up with that.
Yeah, I think you're right. I don't think the net has been, as kind to Arkansas, as a lot of the fans believe it should be, just given the run that they're on. I look at Ken Palm regularly, and I think Arkansas is right there in the 19 to 20 range. And the Ken Palm ratings are based on like efficiency margin, and Eric Busselman will tell you that Arkansas is not the most aesthetically pleasing offensive team all the time, and so that right there will bring your offensive efficiency figure down. But they're at number 19 with a I don't know, you could probably say an ugly offense at times, just because they've been really, really terrific defensively over the last 6 or 7 weeks.
They really have. It's a tremendous run. Thanks for your time, Scotty. We appreciate your knowledge on Arkansas and also what they did over the weekend. That was a great game with Kentucky. On Saturday, you had that one. You had the Florida State game against who were they playing? Who? Virginia, and I know that wasn't a top 5 or 10, but the turn and make it. You had Texas up by winning by 1 at West Virginia last seconds. I know I'm missing a game or two. You had TCU and Texas Tech, and there's another one that's then Gonzaga St. Mary's. It was nuts, and some of them were down, bang bang to the very end of the game. At the beginning, I mean, like just one game after another, all the way to the late game with Gonzaga and St. Mary's. And we'll feature St. Mary's, by the way, in an hour. Smalls, you just said